Okay, and here we are, hour number 2. Donald Jeffries is back tonight to talk about things of a political nature. There's a lot inclusive in that statement, of course. It's kind of one of those endless things. If there was ever a spectator sport for America that is not sports, and I do think news and information is the number one spectator sport in America right now, and I don't think it's going to be headed off. The amount of censorship, the culling of viable, valid information from the news in the digital age with supercomputers and AI is now a piece of cake. Orwell would howl with laughter at what's going on. And let me welcome Don back to the program. I'm going to read this and get your response to it. Don, how are you?
Fine, thanks. Thanks for having me again, Jeff.
You bet. I just did this. I'm going to do it again because it's really important. And people join every hour for whatever reason, but man, this is really too much. The Pentagon has unveiled a new program to fight what it calls large-scale automated disinformation attacks. I'll read it again. The Pentagon has unveiled an initiative to fight large-scale automated disinformation attacks by unearthing deep fakes and other polarizing content with the eventual goal of rooting out so-called malicious intent news and information and commentary entirely. Any thoughts on that, Don?
Yeah, I posted about that this week, and it's ironic because Trump has talked so much about fake news, and rightly so. It's perhaps maybe his greatest legacy is going to be that at least people now are aware of the term fake news. People interpret it differently, but the left's campaign, when you're talking about censorship on the internet, obviously that's mostly driven by the establishment left, and which has eliminated very popular voices, regardless of what you think of them, like Alex Jones and many other lesser-known people that have been driven, deplatformed, been driven off of social media, had their, in case of Alex Jones, he had a huge, millions of followers, and
right.
His business has absolutely been destroyed because of this campaign from the left. But here you have a case where I guess the more conservative, the right-wing establishment is fighting back here, and they don't like a version of fake news either. That's that phony left-right paradigm. I think what they're all trying to fight, Jeff, is shows like this where somebody can get on and talk about, talk against war, talk about, defending civil liberties, can talk about the corruption everywhere, the lies about every historical narrative, going back as far as we can remember. That's what they want to fight. It's not the left-right thing. And here in the case of Trump and his administration, they're proving that they don't really support freedom of speech any more than the left does. It's just, if they're criticizing him, he doesn't like it. But again, they're not interested in freedom of speech, and it's a shame. It really is, because the internet has been so wonderful. I mean, your program, my little program I do on iHeartRadio, those things could not be. We couldn't get on any, in any kind of mainstream media. It's possible because of this what was a wonderful internet, and I hope people out there are trying to do everything they can to try to fight and stop this censorship, and maybe get the internet at some point back to what it was 10, 15 years ago.
I like the idea, but in all practical sense, I don't see it. We're not going to be able to stand up to these people. That doesn't mean we quit. It just means reality. They'll kill us. They don't care about how many people they kill to achieve their desired goal. They'll kill 1 billion people. 1 million means nothing. They don't care. And that's the big advantage they hold over most people. Most people can't imagine something like that. How could they be so psychopathic as to even think like that? That's who they are. Psychopathic, sociopathic, evil, maniacal killers. Don't bet against it.
Absolutely. And how many quotes do we have? I mean, I tabulated a bunch of them in Hidden History in my book, from people like Prince Philip, for instance, who's, I guess, still alive. He's probably getting close to 100 now. But he is alive. On 2 different occasions, He has remarked how he wanted to come back if there was such a thing as reincarnation. He wanted to be reincarnated as a plague to wipe out
a virus,
to wipe out millions or billions of people. I mean, and there's so many of these. Ted Turner, Jacques Cousteau. I mean, go back as far as you can. I think Aldous Huxley. Yeah. All these people were eugenicists, and they not only harbor a secret desire maybe to kill people, but they fantasize about this stuff. And it's in my new book I have a timeline basically of the 20th century that talks about all these not only these horrific experiments the American military and intelligence agencies did on orphan children and prisoners and mental patients, the most helpless people most vulnerable people in our society, but all the spraying of deadly viruses and chemicals that were done on whole populations. So clearly, the people they have no compunction about killing people.
None. The first known example of spraying innocent people was, I think, 1950, and they sprayed San Francisco Bay Area with some toxin or another, and they've been doing it ever since. They don't care. The people are just masses of guinea pigs. That's it. Now let's also mention here that Don's new book, Donald Jeffries, the author, Crimes and Cover-Ups in American Politics, 1776 to 1963. Forward written by Ron Paul, nonetheless, and it is a classic book. It's an instant classic. It's our real history, something that the program I just mentioned to you would rather see go away. But you have a chance to get it, keep it, and read it. So I would urge you to do that. This story isn't quite over. Let me read a little bit more about this. And as I said last hour, once we crossed into the digital age, whether it be video, still photo, you didn't know. If you looked at a still photo, you couldn't tell if it was real anymore. You can't tell if video is real. CGI, you can't tell what you read is real. You don't know. You are completely now at the mercy of the machine, and the machine is all tentacles of the same beast. All of it. The internet was created to control the sheep, and it is doing that masterfully. Here's the next graph in this story. DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, under the aegis of the Pentagram, is seeking software, meaning they already have it. AI software capable of churning through a test set, they've already done this, of 500,000 news stories, photos, and audio-video clips to target and neutralize potentially viral information before it has a chance to spread. Understand, friends? Before it gets out of the gate, it's dead. Nothing's going to go viral anymore unless they want it to. When you do a Google search for a topic, what do you get? You're getting a carefully cultivated, sanitized dose of propaganda. That's what you're getting.
Yeah,
here's
absolutely.
The next part. No, go ahead. Go on.
No, I was saying, and this really goes perfectly fits in line with Cass Sunstein's plan under Obama, where he wanted to. I mean, it's so much like. I mean, it's a little bit different strategy because his plan, and I think we've seen that come to fruition. Anybody that's visited conspiracy-friendly forums out there, whether it's JFK assassination or anything else, has experienced this troll-like behavior and people that, they all accuse each other of being government agents, but clearly something is going on there, and that was Cass Sunstein's plan, was to infiltrate these kinds of places with, government-paid people to disrupt things, to deflect debate into a desirable direction, and that can cause division, and we see that's kind of what happens in society at large. I mean, the people that rule us are constantly causing division among racial vision, genders, whatever, and they're keeping us distracted from basically 80% or so of us are getting screwed constantly. And this is the idea, to keep us fighting amongst each other, order by chaos. It's the oldest conspiracy credo in the book. Chaos out of chaos.
Yeah, they love it, and they're so good at it now. When you own the media, you own the game, you know how to play it. And there's so much more depth to the program than just that. It's not just a question of ownership. The whole internet I'm talking about Google to PayPal to Twitter. It doesn't matter. The internet, online, all created with advanced knowledge of exactly where they wanted it to go, to take it, and to exert control over the masses. It's unbelievably brilliant, and they have done it. Here's the rest of that graph. In DARPA jargon, the aim is to automatically detect, attribute, and characterize falsified multimodal media to defend against large-scale automated disinformation attacks. Unbelievable. Polarizing viral content, however, includes inflammatory truths. And this program's ultimate goal seems to be to stamp that out. They don't want anything inflammatory out there. Nothing viral, unless they say, you can go viral with that. They won't say it, they'll just do it. This is all done. They're not so stupid as to advertise, hey, we're thinking about doing this. What do you think? It's a done deal.
Maybe they can come up with a new chant at the Trump rally: "Stamp out the truth." But this really, if you look back,
that's what this program is designed to do.
Yeah,
let's be honest.
But I mean, this is really just kind of a more sophisticated and an electronic version of what we first saw in that famous 1967 CIA memo about the dissenters and critics of the Warren Report. If you go back and read that, I mean, that lays out the timeline. All this is exactly what they talked about there. Use assets, friendly assets under Operation Mockingbird, which were everywhere in the media then and still are, to try to discredit these naysayers who were pointing out the emperor wasn't wearing any clothes. And if people can read that, it's online. It's a real memo. And it was written by, your tax dollars were at work there. Another example of your fine uses that your tax dollars are put to. But it was, again, to stop people stamping out the truth then in a small way about one very important subject, the JFK assassination and the conspiracy that they were trying to cover up. But now they've just gone into this is, we don't want any truth getting out anywhere. I mean, it doesn't matter. I'm fond of talking about a real domino theory, and that real domino theory is if we could ever peel back the layers of an onion on any of these cases. I mean, something as recent as the Seth Rich murder, or something as old as the JFK assassination, JFK Jr.'s death, any of this stuff. If you peel back and can possibly get the truth exposed to the masses and get them to wake up about any of those issues, then the dominoes begin to fall. They may fall backwards if you can get the truth revealed about Seth Rich. They'll start falling backwards because these things are all connected. It's kind of a, what's the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon separation or whatever that is. That's the same kind of premise here. These things are all connected, and but to try to get people to understand that is so difficult because they,
Don, what are they going to do? Really, when this program is admitted to be in place, it's already in place. The people who are addicted to their screens, which is probably 80-90% of the public now, socially mobile public, they have their smartphone, and they think they're smart. Oh, my God. No, they're not. They're being propagandized and put into little cubby holes, and they'll never figure it out. That's not to impugn them all. They just don't have a chance. When you're fed a diet of lies and corruption, what do you think your body's going to look like? It's going to look like a fat body full of lies and corruption. That's what you're going to get. It's no mystery.
And we're dealing with such normalcy bias here where people don't, I mean, you can look at people as J. Edgar Hoover of all people. A conspirator, certainly in the JFK assassination, is the architect of the cover-up, one of the architects. But still, he said something very profound once when he talked about, the communist conspiracy he was talking about. But it could be, taken on to much greater dimensions than that by saying that the average person does not want to confront what is here, the scope of this. And James Forrestal, who I wrote about in my new book, I believe, was murdered. They claimed he, jumped from the window of the Naval Hospital. Yeah,
no question.
I mean, clearly he was the first critic of the state of Israel. He was the he was good friends with Joe McCarthy of all people, and he said to Joe McCarthy once, and I think again this can be taken to mean any issues, but he said, Joe, if this was just this wasn't a conspiracy, a monumental conspiracy, once in a while they'd make an error in our favor. Once in a while something good would happen, and I've said that for a long time. If this is all random, whether it's politics or whatever, once in a while the cream would rise to the top. Somebody good would achieve a position of and they would actually do something for the people. No one ever does, or if they do, in the case of JFK and RFK and others, they're killed. So I mean, it's clearly, but again, people don't want to. They don't, and they tell you think everything's a conspiracy. Well, yeah, we're being run by conspirators, so this is what they do. This is standard operating procedure for them.
The world is run by conspiracy. It always has been, and it's now easier than ever to do it. It's just not a problem. When I saw the DARPA story, I mean, here they are. They have no qualms with putting it in our faces now. Even though it's still deceptive, because I believe it's already done. Here's more. You know what they're calling this? It is true. As I've been saying for a long time, there is a semantic war being fought against what's left of the American intellect. Right? They're calling this. DARPA is calling this a semantic forensics program. Now think about that. Determined by whom? Who's determining what the semantics are and what they mean? And what's forensic about it? DARPA is. The semantic forensics program will scan news stories and social media posts with a barrage of algorithms in the hope of identifying inconsistencies that could mark a story as fake. Now, they're not going to go into the trouble mode of trying to determine if the story is a fake or not. That story will just blanking disappear. Gone. Right. It'll just be weeded out. Even if it seems like it, or they think it may have a key word in it that's wrong, gone. Goodbye. The desired program will not just identify a meme as inauthentic. It will identify the source of that meme, the alleged intent behind it, and predict the impact of its spread. To hear them tell it, the Pentagon just wants to even the playing field, right? Oh yeah, just sure. Even the field between the good guys.
Stop those Democrats.
Yeah, that's right. They want to even the field between the good guys, the fake hunters pursuing the cause of truth in media, and the bad guys sowing discord, one slowed down Nancy Pelosi speech at a time. But the Pentagon's targets aren't limited to deep fakes. The bogeyman of the month being used to justify this unprecedented military intrusion into the social media and news realm, or fake news at all, is there. If the program is successful, after 4 years of trials, I'm telling you, it's already done. It will be expanded to target all, get this, Don, malicious intent. Who's going to determine what malicious intent is? Who's going to determine what malicious is? Who's going to determine what intent is?
Yeah, and that sounds just like the authoritarian left. Doesn't it sound exactly like what the left does? I mean, when they talk about hate speech or
they're already doing
motivation.
Absolutely.
It's the exact same thing. It's amazing.
This is going to be run through the world's fastest supercomputers at the speed of light times 10 with absolute AI control. And remember what they're doing with AI, friends. Some time ago, they said, we are going to teach AI common sense. Who's going to teach AI whose common sense are they talking about? So you get the idea.
People watched any science fiction movies? I mean, it's amazing. But I mean, it's bad enough that I think 1984 by Orwell is still taught in some high schools around the country, which could anything be more laughably ironic than that they're warning us of what could happen here in the future if we don't watch out, when it's mainly a textbook and we've gone beyond that. But even a movie much more recently, Minority Report, all this kind of strays into that area. How close are we to having some kind of an ability or so-called ability, it doesn't even have to be real, proceeding of if an individual might commit a crime or has the propensity to commit a crime and punishing them before they actually do anything. Because that's really what is done. Most people don't realize that most of when people are arrested, for instance, of trying to contact a minor online or whatever, there's almost never any minor involved. It's usually an adult police officer. It's that kind of thing where they're
a police officer, a cop, sure.
They're going after, and I think there's something terribly dangerous about that. Sure, you want to protect children, you want to do that, but and that really leads into that Minority Report area where you're going after this individual. What is he thinking about? Are we going to talk about thought crimes? Are we going to have fantasy crimes or things like that about somebody? Does anybody want their mind read like that? I think it's very beyond Orwellian.
No, we are post-Orwellian, no question about it, none. And these people who are caught with these stings and setups are they may not go to jail. They may not have to go to court because they'll be offered the option of either going to trial or going through a mandatory re-education course. Think about it. And they'll just be reprogrammed. Sickening. I want to commend, again, RT America for this. This story comes from RT. Just brilliant. I've got it up in headlines for you. All right, back with Donald Jeffries in just a couple minutes. Hang on. Okay, welcome back. Talking with Donald Jeffries, and you can see his book right under his name and guests. Hopefully you'll all take a chance and avail yourself of this rare walk through history. This kind of information that Don has written in the book will not be available in a few short years. It just won't exist. They won't burn his books. They just won't be available. Amazon will drop it, just like Google drops returns on various searches. Just wait and see. This is all now utterly within their hands. And I don't mean to sound negative, because we who are listening to this program tonight, and I count myself a listener, are learning something every day. I've been doing this now 26 years. And I know, been able to present information that has helped a lot of people. And that's what Don does. That's what all conscientious people do. Even if we don't agree on everything, it doesn't matter. We're trying. And we're doing it in a real, honest sense, not a contrived sense. And I'm honestly, I'm sickened at so many radio talk show hosts now, live streamers online. These people are not journalists. They don't care. I'm not saying they have to have a degree. They're in it primarily for ego. They want to be a celebrity. They want to be a star. That's what this culture has become. The number one response among millennials and Gen Z, what do you want to be when you grow up? The number one response was a YouTuber, a successful YouTube celebrity. Get it? That's why so much of this news that they're putting out as talk shows and live streaming online is garbage. It's all derivative of somebody else's work. They're just ripping and reading stuff, starring themselves. They buy a green screen background, they buy a camera, they can put up any kind of a backdrop that they want, make it look like they're in some network central studio, and they grease up their hair and they just start reading and yammering. It's really, it should offend all of you that so many people they're frauds. Sorry, the way I see it.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, I've commented many times, the only difference between and everything I write about, everything you talk about, there wouldn't be a need for us. We're filling a void because we don't have a free press in this country. We have state-controlled media, and the only difference between the old Soviet Union's TASS and Pravda and our mainstream media today is that the Soviet citizens were astute enough to understand they were being lied to and that this wasn't real. It wasn't a free press. It wasn't journalism.
Good point.
Most Americans apparently don't understand that when they turn on CNN and they look at somebody like Anderson Cooper, who is one of the more later
Anderson Vanderbilt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Gloria Vanderbilt, I mean, he represents everything wrong with America. In Survival of the Richest, my book, I documented...
So does Don Lemon, by the way. Let's not leave that...
Sure.
Excuse me. He's a real creep, that guy.
Oh, just awful. I mean, these when you turn on and you watch somebody like Anderson Cooper, who has admitted to being a CIA, being recruited on college campus by the CIA,
right.
as many of these journalists are, is descended from nobility. He didn't build that. He didn't work his way up to anything. He was handed the job because he was Gloria Vanderbilt's son, and he was a CIA recruit. Don't mean to just pick on him. Then you have Chris Cuomo, who is an allegedly attorney, but is talking about, look at the First Amendment if you think hate speech is allowed. I mean, this guy's on TV. He's supposedly a journalist. He doesn't even attempt to hide his bias, and of course, he has the connection as well. His father was Mario Cuomo, the former governor of New York, presidential candidate. He's now the brother of the president of Mayor. So the governors. This is what you have. You have these incestuous connections everywhere, and there are no Lois Lanes or Clark Kent's fictitious characters. And somebody like Penn Jones, one of my heroes in the JFK assassination, where you have these hard drinking. You look back to the old days of Hollywood, and you see the way newsmen were portrayed. Probably exaggerated to a great degree, but they were, pecking away in their typewriter, cigarette dangling out of their mouth, hat askew, bottle of bourbon there, but they wanted to get the story. And they didn't really care who they hurt to get the story. That was the only thing you could maybe fault them for. But at least they had a desire, they had some kind of inquisitiveness. There's journalists now today, even local journalists, I've talked to some of them around my area, they are scared to take on a used car salesman half the time. They have no courage at all. And I guess maybe they know their editors won't back them up or their producers won't back them up. But the American media is shameful. And everything, when I wrote Hidden History, the subtext to that book was how, every one of these issues, the mainstream media didn't do their job. They didn't do any investigating. Look at the JFK assassination. Everything that was done in the JFK assassination was by private citizens, housewives, World Health Organization workers, retired chicken farmers, lawyers like my mentor, Mark Lane, people like that, and on down to our friend John Barbour, producing the films he has and working with Jim Garrison. Nobody in the mainstream media has done any. The Tom Wickers and Scotty Restons, the Dan Rathers, the Walter Cronkites, they lied. And they just promulgated absolute propaganda that would have made somebody from TASS and Prob to blush watching some of the CBS specials and so forth. And this is why Oliver Stone was attacked so much when his movie JFK came out, because it was something the media was not used to seeing. And they had a whole book about that called The JFK, the Book of the Film. It was written by Oliver Stone and Zachary Sklar, and it just consisted of all the attacks and some supporting, very, very, very little supporting articles and so forth. But they attacked that film like has never been seen before. Dan Rather editorialized, I believe, 3 times on the CBS Evening News against Oliver Stone's film. Unprecedented. What does that have to do with the nightly news? So this is what we're fighting, and you can see whenever anybody, a truth teller to any degree, comes out, there's somebody like Tulsi Gabbard out there now who's saying some interesting things. Well, they're not going to let her play in any reindeer games. She's banned from the Democratic Party debates. She's been attacked by Stephen Colbert when he had her on a show. If you watch that interview, he was going apoplectic. And when you see this,
he's such a pile of fertilizer, that guy.
Oh,
sorry. By the way, Tulsi has a skeleton or two in her closet.
Oh, she's not perfect. She's definitely
not. She's CFR. Come on,
CFR, and she's well, that's what I'm saying. I think this is why so many of us took a chance on Trump and to Bernie Sanders, either one of you, because they were saying some good things. That's the most we can hope for.
That's right, and that's all they did was say them. That's all they did. We got conned.
Exactly.
We got duped. And I want to say a word about John Barbour, who I know is not listening by any chance.
No, we're not.
John qualifies for the highest award that I would bestow in journalism, and that is Citizen Journalist of the Year, or maybe the decade. And what he has put out and what he has achieved, his dedication. And we don't have people like John. I deeply miss my dear friend, Jim Marrs, another great American citizen journalist, a brilliant guy, a professional journalist, but in his later years, he just kept cranking it out. There are some jewels out there, and when they're gone, we will have no replacements. Not for them, not with the caliber and quality. And as I've said many times, the young people coming up did not experience life as we knew it. To them, it is an abstract. It has no relevance or real meaning to their lives. It might as well be science fiction from Pluto. They don't know. It's nothing to them. So how can they ever be expected to accrue the kind of wisdom that we have to make the judgments and the evaluations that we can do? They can't do it. There are a few exceptions, but that's it.
Absolutely. Well, obviously, somebody like John Barbour at his age, he lived for most of his life in what I call America 1.0. I call what we're living in now the monstrosity.
You mean Jim Mars, not John Barbour?
John Barbour too. John Barbour being alive still was, but yes, Jim Mars as well lived. Jim Mars was one of two examples that I know of any kind of mainstream reporter that did work on the assassination, because he was a local Dallas newspaper
51 reporter. Years he spent.
Yes. Yeah, and he and Earl Goles, who was another local Dallas reporter, they are the only reporters that they did real work on and they broke stories, they interviewed witnesses, but that's what all investigative journalists are supposed to do. Nobody did that. And so we've come, and my books, when I'm writing about history, whether it's older history as in the new book or more recent history as in hidden history, if you look, you can see how we arrived. By studying history, the past is prologue, as Shakespeare told us. You can see why we're at the position we're at, because we allowed this gradualism. Every time we allowed, unconstitutional roadblocks, free speech zones, Patriot Act, all these kinds of things, nonsensical explanations for political assassinations, the ridiculous fairy tale of 9/11, all these things, the atrocities at Waco, Oklahoma City bombing, the fairy tale there. The American people bought, or at least most of them did. There were naysayers like us out there, protesting each time, but they allowed it. And it's like the old analogy of the frog being in water. You turn up the heat gradually. And that's what the American people are. They're a giant frog at this point. The heat has been turned up for decades and decades. And they just don't seem to get it. And it's very, sometimes it can get very disillusioning. And I when people ask me, well, you sound so pessimistic on most of my interviews, I say, I said, well, it's hard not to be, but I think the best we can hope for at this point.
Don, you never sound. I haven't heard one pessimistic word from you. Not one.
Well, that's nice to hear, but I've been certainly. When you're talking about you're exposing this kind of massive corruption, and you're just trying to show that, okay, they lied here. It's not a theory. I don't have any theory. And people talk about conspiracy theorists. Well, you can show me what my theory is. I'm just telling you, this is what they said, and this is what the evidence showed about virtually any important incident you want to find. But you become to the point where you get so cynical, and I think the best we can hope for is to do what Robert Kennedy said in one of his greatest speeches, and that's try to, each of us, if we send forth tiny ripples of hope, together, if there's enough tiny ripples that get together, they can coalesce and knock down the mightiest walls of oppression and injustice. And that may sound idealistic, but I think that's really all. You talked earlier about people not doing anything or responding to anything, and that's true. But the only thing, we have to have power in numbers. And I remember being frustrated years ago. I don't know if you ever got them, but I used to get emails from people saying, "Hey, let's all boycott gasoline next Thursday." And that's something that you can do. It's risk-free. You're not going to be going. They can't throw you in jail for not buying gas a day. No. But we couldn't even do that. We couldn't get that done, and that's the problem. Is we need to, or somebody was saying, let's have a national call into work day or something, a national strike, things like that. Those are the only things that could be effective. Or hundreds of thousands of people would have to be marching, at least, if not millions, in
No,
the yellow
Americans
jackets.
have lost it. And I'm not sure I like the word lost. I think it's been taken away from them. The initiative to get up off their asses and doing anything. There are electromagnetic frequencies for every emotion. There are also things in the food and the water that can cause docility, passivity, warm and fuzzy. They can create anything they want in people with EMFs. It's all there. That's why Europe's people didn't get up. That's why Americans aren't getting up. They're not. I don't think they're able to. I'm not going to condemn them because they're failing. I think that they've been caused to fail. I really believe that. There's a very big factor involved here that is unknown and not talked about. It just isn't. Here's something funny for you. I've worked this a long time, and I've worked it very hard. And this guy is a nice guy. He's pretty smart. He sends a lot of good stories in, and I use many of them. But he wrote this. He's got this thing because I criticize Trump, right? I do what's the truth. I just do reality. He wrote uncanny. What? I got to read this because I laughed. Uncanny Jeff Rense, unmolested by the deep state, suspicious, huh? And the New World Order establishment, unbanned from any and all social media platforms, which I don't use, by the way, who also sells bugs, insects, as a food, a great source of protein, paradox protein, is ahead of the globalist curve. Now, how can that be? Really? Oh, and let's not forget Jeff's inside source who told him that Hillary Rodham Clinton is running for president again in 2020. I'm guilty because somebody told me something. Now I'm wondering who that source might be. John Podesta, Huma Abedin, Leon Panetta, Jen Palmieri, Robbie Mook, perhaps, laughing my ass off. Anyway, you've earned your new title, Deep State Jeff. Now, see, nothing could possibly be further than the truth, but this guy actually believes that there's some kind of connectivity there because I haven't been kicked off the radio yet.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why I haven't been kicked off. I'll tell you, and I got this from, there is an elite that runs this planet, a globalist elite. It's way up there, it's out of sight individual. And I was told by one of those people, through a third party and then directly. And I was very honored to be able to speak to somebody at that level because it doesn't happen very often. I'm not saying honored in the sense I think that these are gods. I just had a great insight. And he said, we chose you long ago that your program was going to be the living memory, the archive of the great changeover of this planet. And that's why I've been protected to a degree. And that's why I survived the assassination attempt 4 years ago, which I should not have survived. There was some kind of divine intervention, off-planet intervention. I think some of you know the story. But I'm supposed to be doing this. It's not that I'm a member of the deep state. It's that I'm supposed to be doing this, and there are people above the deep state who want this work done. So for all of you who have doubts and sneer and snicker, there's the truth. You do whatever you will. Go ahead, Don.
Yeah, well, and I think you bring up an interesting point because I run into this a lot where people, especially in the conspiracy world, if you've received any kind of renown as you have, and you have any kind of an audience, people just automatically assume, and they certainly did with Alex Jones, that you're a hired agent, you're a disinfo, you're a limited hangout. I mean, we hear, why don't you talk about this? Why don't you talk about that? Right. And that kind of, I mean, I've got a little of that myself, but, and I get so tired of hearing that because I just prefer to, I mean, I understand. I'm certainly not walking into this with rose-colored glasses, and I know that there are undercover agents in hidden history. I talked about how, the intelligence agencies have infiltrated groups on the left like the Black Panthers and on the right like the Ku Klux Klan forever. They put the paid infiltrators in there, and so I'm sure they do the same thing as Cass Sunstein suggested online. And I'm sure there are hosts and the people that seem conspiracy friendly that are really not totally honest. But I just prefer to approach people at face value until proven otherwise. Because how can you prove something like that? if you're, when somebody accuses you or you're being paid to post by the CIA or whatever, I mean, there's no response to that. It's like the old days when they accused you of being a communist. I mean, you can't really, which in many cases was just because you were being a free thinker. You were going against the time, whatever was the mainstream view of the moment. But I think that it's disturbing that we have to, and again, I think there's something in when you talk about that the people at the top, above the elite, want these things. I mean, Vincent Salandria was one of my favorite critics of the Warren Report, and he really opened my eyes because I was already starting to see things as he had seen them decades earlier. But I first started thinking there is something. I believe the people that run things want people like us out there to expose them to a limited audience, because they know, at least right now, that's all it's going to be, is a limited audience, because otherwise, certainly they're capable of more sophisticated cover-ups. In the JFK assassination, it took me decades before I finally realized, I've been talking about the magic bullet and planning and all that, and how it's in pristine condition. Wait a minute. These are sophisticated conspirators. Why wouldn't they plant a bullet that looked like it had been fired into something? Why would they plant that bullet? And we saw later, it's a calling card. Later on, we saw that in 9/11. Why would they do something as obvious, when everything's been blown to dust, to smithereens, and yet this magical passport comes down on top of all the debris and somehow was unaffected by it. And we see that in so many
they're mocking us.
Yeah, they are. And because they know no matter how obvious they make it, that public out there that is so deep into normalcy bias, that is so asleep and just they're comatose, no matter how obvious they make it. And it's a game to them. And I think maybe they enjoy antagonizing people like us who are awake. And, because, some of us will just go crazy. I can't believe, how can you not see that? It's so obvious. But they want it that way. And so I think it is a game for them at some level, because clearly, why do they pretend at this point? Why do they pretend that we're free in America? Why go on with the game, the charade? I mean, you see the smiling, vacuous newscasters, alleged journalists smiling and, hey guys, and talking as if they're at a pep rally. And all this horrible tyranny is all around us. And it's so incongruous to see these smiling model wannabes that are up there reporting this, the basically state-run news. But do they really believe it? Or is this all part of the game, too, where they just, for whatever reason, they don't want to take off that veneer, kind of like a serial killer. Maybe they want to play a game with their victims before they take off the mask and reveal who they are. There's so much of that. I mean, it goes back to, when you talk about people not trusting anybody, my mentor, Mark Lane, he's been accused by lots of people. I don't know why, of being some kind of an agent of the government. And one of the books that influenced my fiction especially was the Illuminatus trilogy, which was written back in the 70s by Robert Anton Wilson and Robert Shea. And in that's where I first became aware of the Illuminati, when they, about this thing that they were talking about. And they basically said there were 5 leaders or, whatever, top honchos of the Illuminati, and they had Mark Lane as one of the 5. So this is a fiction writer talking about Mark Lane being at the top of the Illuminati. So that's how ridiculous I guess it can get, but it's clearly there's a game element there, and those of us who study these things, sometimes you kind of have to laugh at it, because it does just depress you if you take it too seriously.
No, you can't. You got to set it aside. It just moves right on by, and if you confront it, you're wasting your time and energy. We don't do that. There's too much to do, too much good work to do. But this story about DARPA, I would urge all of you to read it. I would urge all of you to read it twice and really think about it and understand that this is already going on, and they're just making a game out of it. Everything they do, they mock us. You have to understand, it's a mockery. So they are going to literally control everything you see, everything you hear, everything you read. That's it. And there will be fewer and fewer truth tellers out there. And when our generation is gone, they got the world they want. This time, they know. They got time on their side. Donald, thank you for being here as always. Talk to you again. I'd like to get you on here a couple times a month, maybe, if you have the time. It would be great.
Wonderful. Whenever you want me, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
All right, you betcha. Good night, Don.
Take care.
All right. Donald Jeffries. Remember that name. We're going to get him on here twice a month, I'm sure. He's got a great view of what's going on. Okay, we'll pause and come back with another hour for you. No charge, but please don't forget our sponsors. They count. All right, we'll be right back.